over at BangTheBook.com. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Lots of great things going on over there right now. We'll have wall-to-wall coverage of Super Bowl 53, different opinions on prop bets, system picks, Danny Vork's power ratings, all kinds of different stuff for the big game. But in the meantime, we've got situational betting articles for the NHL and NBA. College basketball one should come today or tomorrow from Kyle Hunter as well. Daily NHL picks from Parker Michaels. Daily college basketball picks from Kyle Hunter. We'll have some additional soccer content this week. We got golf. We'll have some Kentucky Derby content on Bang the Book Radio tomorrow. Lots of stuff going on right now. We'll keep you very, very busy here as we wait for Super Bowl 53. You want to make sure you can shop around for the best prices on all of the prop bets on the side, total, and money line for this game. So if you don't have an account over at DSI Sportsbook, sign up over there. Use that BTB200 promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the sportsbook up to $500. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino up to $500. Give yourself a head start there with the props and all the different things that are going on for the big game in Atlanta in 13 days on February 3rd. All right, we'll go ahead and start things off with our first guest. That is Joe Everett from DraftScouts and Insider Football, somewhere between Indianapolis and Mobile. Joe, how's it going, man?
I'm going great. Great last night of football. I'm on I-65 South, headed to Mobile. So, yeah, life is good, my friend.
Well, and definitely make sure you're following Joe on Twitter at Joe W. Everett. He's heading down to the Senior Bowl, does a lot of great stuff talking to these players, getting some interviews, and then, of course, the scouting side of it for the upcoming NFL draft. So, Joe, I got to say, man, before we dig into the NFL stuff, you know, what is it about this Senior Bowl event that keeps you going back for more?
Oh, it's the collection of individuals there, not necessarily just the players, but the NFL teams that are represented, the coaching these kids are getting, how they're reacting to it, and there's just something from practice you see that you don't get on game day. It's just the attitude they bring. What are they chirping in practice? Do they bring that juice that you need? It's I love that aspect of it, and then just the official convention of the NFL. So many of these guys, they need to talk to each other. They need to talk about particularly scouting salaries so that we could, get this thing a little bit equalized. I think that's the biggest thing is just the trading of information that goes on. And I'll often tell people, to be a fly on the wall in Mobile, some of the conversations you can hear, you could divulge quite a bit of information in just one hotel in Mobile.
All right, so let's take a look back at the NFC Championship game here. Rams beat the Saints 26-23. Obviously, we all know about the pass interference call. But before we complain about officiating, and there's a lot of complaining that we can do, I did talk about the under for this game, did like that a little bit. Game did stay under the total. But I was very surprised that neither one of these running games had any success, Joe, and both quarterbacks with 40 pass attempts. Not really how I expected this game to go.
Not really. I was glad to be on that under, but it's the Rams basically got back in, and I can't believe the Saints let them do that. I was expecting their running game to really start to come into form, and please give Alvin Kamara the ball more. It's too late now, obviously, but I've been crying that for the last few weeks that why he doesn't get more carries in the running game. I know they'd love to use him as a receiver, and sure, he's so gifted catching the ball, but the impact that he could make on the ground, I don't think we saw enough of that from the Saints, and it's just such a shame that all this work Sean Payton put into this season, all the moves he made. I love the addition of Teddy Bridgewater, and they made a lot into this season, trading a future first-rounder for Marcus Davenport. They pushed all the chips into the middle of the table for this season, and it's just, boy, it's so bitter to see a classy guy like Drew Brees have to go home and have to answer those questions whether or not he's playing again, because they had such a magical season. He was right on that MVP, and that it's just so bitter that, like I said, I would have loved to see more running from the Saints just to keep the Rams at bay. They had that phenomenal start. Why they didn't build on that is my biggest question mark leaving that game.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, you're taking on a Rams team that's 31st in the NFL in yards per carry allowed, and you only run the football 21 times in a game that, again, you were up 13-0 early on. It was mostly a one-possession game throughout after that point. I don't get it, man. I don't get only using Mark Ingram 9 times. I don't get using Kamara 8 times in the running game. And it was pretty clear that, the Rams were going to do what the Patriots do, take away New Orleans' best. Michael Thomas, only 7 targets on the 41 passes from the Saints, only 4 catches for 36 yards. I mean, I think at that point you have to pivot and realize, you know what, maybe we do need to try to run the football a little bit more, figure something else out. That was one of the things that really stood out yesterday in both of these games, to be honest with you, Joe. I didn't think that the coaching was very strong in really any of these games for any of these teams.
And I give Sean Payton so much credit, but exactly that, knowing that he's got that lead, and let's just be frank, Gurley is not looking good. I think this missed practice time is really causing him problems in other areas of his game. I know that they want him to be healthy, but the fact that he's not out there getting his regular reps, I know led to those 2 drop passes, one of which was resulted in an interception. And, it's just a shame because, that kind of reps, it's more mental than physical. We know Todd Gurley can catch a ball. I mean, that's not a question. It's just getting in those reps. I think that they really had them, and God bless C.J. Anderson for doing what he's done. He's a quality back, and the fact that he's even playing right now, I think, is just a credit to him and his vision and ability, but he's not the same back. And the fact that the Rams could not run the ball, that's very disappointing, and it leads me to, just concerns how effective they're going to be on the ground in the next game, because if the scenario plays out exactly the same way in 2 weeks, that's going to be bad for Los Angeles.
Excuse me, dealing with all this dry air in the house and all that kind of thing. So a little bit of a cold here on today's show. I apologize for that. But how about the Brandon Cooks revenge game? 7 grabs, 107 yards on 8 targets. And, I think this was a really big game for Jared Goff. And while the stats aren't eye-popping, he did have the 1 pick, did take the 1 sack. Overall, I thought for a first road start, it was a pretty impressive look for him. And, maybe credit to Sean McVay for giving him a game plan that was pretty easy to digest. But, at least there's that for Goff to build on going into the Super Bowl.
Well, the play action was working finally. That's what it all keys on that. I think the Rams, more so than any team, run it all off of play action, their biggest pass plays, their big chunk plays. And when they finally were able to get that time, it's just the breathing room that the running game gives you. But I think the point you bring up, too, is that Brandon Cooks had information on Sean Payton's offense, clearly, and they're not out of the woods yet with that. This is going to be a Brandon Cooks revenge game times 2. He has not forgotten Josh McDaniels' offense. He'll have definitely a few suggestions, I think, in this whole 2 weeks of game prep, that what he knows about Josh McDaniels and how Tom Brady likes to run that thing and the triangles they use. I mean, that could be a potential advantage for him, but I definitely agree. It was great to see the confidence from Goff, a guy who finished the season a little shaky. You take away that last game against, I think it was San Francisco and then the Cardinals, but all his games against ranked teams and top defenses have not been that good. So to have a big game like that on the road, that is a confidence builder for one Dre Folk.
All right, so let's go to the AFC Championship game here, and I understand that, we can talk about the roughing the passer call. We can talk about some of the things that went on during this game. Obviously, we can talk about Dee Ford lining up the neutral zone, and, otherwise maybe this thing has a different outcome. But also, I know New England had the overtime possession, but they outgained Kansas City 524 to 290, doubled them up in first downs 36 to 18, had the ball for 44 minutes in this game. I mean, if you look at the box score, this thing really shouldn't have even been that close.
Exactly. Now, if you watch New England's first 2 drives, you may have even changed the channel. That's how terrible I felt about that because they just had their way, and it was so physical, and it was all interior runs. They didn't try and go to the corner store. It wasn't any sweeps. It was line them up, hat on a hat, and we're just going to kick your butt in. And I think what I saw a ton of was Tom Brady killing plays at the line of scrimmage, and they were all runs, and you knew it. You knew right when he kill, ran those plays. He had numbers at the line of scrimmage, and he just did a basic, B gap, and we're just going to slam it in there. And how many times did that work? It was had to be frustrating for Kansas City defenders when you're stuck on the field and can't get off, and it ends in 7. It's enough to just have a clock-killing drive like that and drain the time and have Mahomes sitting on the sidelines, but when they capitalize with the 7, it's a dagger each time they did it. And, oh, boy, it was tough to see Mahomes on the sidelines, all those shots of him in the cold just waiting to get the ball. I think the Broncos early in the season gave everybody the recipe on how to give Kansas City a tough time. It's pound the rock, play them short on defense, give them time, and max coverage. And boy, that's the exact. They took a page right off of Denver's book, and I think it worked. It paid off in spades for New England. But Mahomes, as he is that talented to keep him in the game. It just, I thought the game plan again. That's how good Belichick is. And somebody asked what his legacy should be. I don't care about the rings. I don't care about winnings. He's the best defensive game planner that's ever existed. He has a chameleon defense that never lines up the same. They don't line up in the same formation. They are just designed each week specific for the opponent, and that's the work he does. It's just nothing short of impressive, man.
Well, and we could cherry pick a lot of stats from this game, but one that really stands out to me, Tom Brady not sacked at all in this game, and this was a Kansas City defense that was tied for the league lead in sacks in the regular season with 52. Not sacked at all. Only hit once or twice in this game. Meanwhile, Patrick Mahomes sacked 4 times with New England defense that was 30th in the NFL in the regular season in sacks with 30. I mean, that it's cherry-picking one stat, but that speaks to me what Bill Belichick is able to do from a game planning standpoint and why, quite frankly, as we segue into the Super Bowl, it's very interesting to see Sean McVay and all the branches of the coaching tree that he's adding here this offseason up against the greatest of all time in Bill Belichick. It's a fascinating dynamic for the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah. You want to write the book. This is how to start the next chapter for McVay. But I also agree it's not only Belichick, but I think Dante Scarnecchia, the offensive line coach of New England, what a gem he's been. I still have to remind people, he was brought over by the late Ron Meyer when he went over from SMU to then instead stayed for in New England the whole time. So it's just they couldn't be luckier to have a guy like him. And really it was I think you nailed it on the sacks, like Kansas City, the stunts, the twists, those schemes, they just could not deal with it. They couldn't pick up the linebackers, and I think a tired offensive line like the Rams might have similar issues. They're built, I think, a lot alike to Kansas City. And once again, I'm looking at Gurley, a guy that has just not been the same. This is not week 1 through week 8 Gurley. Like that first 8 weeks, I don't think there was a better back, but there's clear something that's not only bothering him, but it's hindering his practice and it's hindering his conditioning. And I just don't think that running game is the same, but the biggest factor there has to be Brandon Cooks and the information. He'll be able to help Wade Phillips, and it's not like Wade Phillips hadn't seen Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick's offense before. I think they'll definitely be ready. I just look at such a high total there. And what we saw in both games, very slow starts, a lot of trepidation, and a lot of teams that just, they're a little bit afraid to make a mistake. And I don't know if I'm in love with that high total just yet. I'm not going to call an under right off the bat. We got 2 weeks, but that seems mighty high in a game that has so much consequence.
Yeah, I mean, you try to take little things out of these 2 conference championship games, and, I don't know if I'll have a side or total play in the Super Bowl, but I know I'll be all over the prop betting market. And Gurley. I mean, is Gurley going to be okay in 2 weeks? Is that a guy that you want to focus on from a prop standpoint? Do we have to default to C.J. Anderson? Does Bill Belichick take the running game away and say, you know what, Jared Goff, if you beat me in the Super Bowl, that's fine. I dare you to do that. On the Patriots side, Rob Gronkowski making an appearance. 6 catches, 11 targets, played him in single coverage at the top of the field, got him in the slot a little bit. They moved him all around. He looked back. He looked like he was back to being the weapon that we kind of expect him to be. I think this is a really hard handicap all the way around for props, side, total, money line. I'm glad we've got 2 weeks to figure it out.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to need 2 weeks. The prop, I would like it. Gronk, he proved me wrong. He's basically been sandbagging and saving for the end of the season, clearly, because if you watch this cat, I'd say from week 10 on into week 14, I didn't think he was going to finish the year. That's how bad he looked, but he's definitely, pulling it together for this postseason run. I would look at that, though. I think the best chance the Rams have to cover Gronkowski would be a matchup with Aqib Talib directly on him. I know he's a cornerback, but if anyone's going to run with Gronkowski and be able to match those 50-50 balls, it'd be Talib, because John Johnson, I don't know that he's the same in coverage. And then Corey Littleton, the linebacker, trying to keep up with Gronkowski, that could get ugly. So I don't know if I'd be afraid of a Gronkowski yardage prop as long as it wasn't too ludicrous. But, yeah, at this point, it's would it start off a 1-point favorite by the Rams, and then quickly Patriots money came right back in. So it's I don't know, that could flip-flop again. We got a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to look at the line for this game because, something that we'll talk about as we go throughout the week here, this is the first Super Bowl with legalized sports wagering in multiple states. So anything up in the Northeast going to have to inflate the New England price. In Vegas, they're kind of protecting against Rams money that they expect to come in over the next 2 weekends with the close proximity to Southern California. And then offshore, you've got places taking positions already. Pinnacle, the only book at 1.5. You've got Bovada at 3 already. You've got some books at 2.5. So the market dynamics for the Super Bowl are really fascinating here too, because you're going to get inflated prices at the DraftKings brick and mortars in the Northeast, the FanDuel ones, obviously the William Hills that are up there as well. So this is really interesting in that regard too, where this line's going to look a lot different depending on what part of the country you're in.
Oh, it's all about region, and like you mentioned, that now that these specific states, that really opens the door for fans to maybe make a little bit of movement there. But I don't know. I think so many people are going to be tempted to jump on that patch. It's we'll see if the Rams money comes in Vegas and things like that. I think so many people will be tempted to give Tom Brady and Bill Belichick that opportunity to ride off in the sunset together,
One last thing I want to ask you about here, Joe, and this is a point that a lot of people don't talk too much about, and we'll certainly hammer this point home with 2 weeks to talk about the Super Bowl. This week is basically about practice. It's about walkthroughs. It's about getting in the training room and getting guys healthy. Next week, maybe you practice Monday or Tuesday, something like that. But then you've got to go to Atlanta, go through all the media obligations, the hoopla, everything associated with this game. The Patriots been there, done that, just did it last year. The Rams, not so much. You don't have a lot of Super Bowl experience here, and you certainly don't have it with the head coach. So speaking specifically about Jared Goff, when you were looking at him through the draft process and all that, how do you think he handles being this guy in the spotlight here next week with all the media stuff?
Well, that's the one aspect I do like about Goff. He seems to me to be quasi-dumb, and I mean that in the most flattering way. I think he's got a short memory. Anything goes bad, he just forgets it, brushes it off, and moves right along. He really does have that attitude about him, and I think that's why a lot of people in the evaluation process liked him, because he just has that really great quarterback attitude, and that play didn't go up, I'll make the difference the next play. I'll make it up the next play. And that's kind of Mahomes has that machismo about him. It's like, no, it's going to be all right. He's a very cool customer. I like him in media sessions, but I would worry, if anything, it's the time off. Time off likely to maybe hurt the younger Rams team, and then managing the media, it's a barrage of questions, like you mentioned that second week. It is full force. They're just getting it thrown in their face, and I think a Patriots team, and particularly Brady, they're just so good, not even answering the media's questions, but yet spending a good 10 minutes answering, yet giving no answer. So I think they're set up for that time off, and they'll be able to manage it extremely well. But yeah, that would be the worry, is just a younger team entirely. I think emotionally the Rams have spent quite a bit just getting here, and that might catch up with them at this time off. So that's definitely a worry. But as far as Goff, though, I tell you, there is a little something about him. You hear it in interviews. You hear it in the huddle when he's breaking plays and the sound's on. There's a reason he's a quarterback. He's a pretty cool customer.
All right, last thing here, and this won't be Super Bowl related, but you're going to be at the Senior Bowl here. Who are some guys you're looking at? Obviously a lot of people know the biggest named seniors, but who are the guys that you're excited to see down there?
Well, I think it's going to be a great defensive group. Everyone wanted to see all the quarterbacks last year, Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen. We don't have those blue chippers, but what we do have is a few edge rushers that are, I think, going to be some of the best edge rushers in about 5 years. We're talking about, particularly Montez Sweat, the Mississippi State Bulldog. He could have declared early last year, but really wanted to cement his stock, and I'm glad he did. He improved on everything about his game. And then Jalen Ferguson from Louisiana Tech. He is the NCAA's career leading sacker. He broke Terrell Suggs' record, and a lot of pressure's on him to show up this week against these tackles. And I think the other one, O'Shane Zimenez from Old Dominion. Those three pass rushers this week, the table is set for them to make quite a bit of money. And really, this is what the league needs. We talked just earlier in this show about Marcus Davenport. The Saints traded a future first just to move up 3 spots to take this guy. If Marcus Davenport was in this draft class, he might not even be a first-rounder, is what I'd tell you, because he's not even top 5 of the pass rushers in this group. So I think that's where the talent in this class lies. This is a terrific event for edge rushers to make some hay. Von Miller, one of my first Senior Bowls, I think had one of the greatest weeks of all time, and went from a mid-first rounder all the way to the second overall pick. So, yeah, that's what you're definitely looking for, those edge rushers, I think, this year to make some money. And then also it's a pretty good safety group and off-the-ball linebacker. I think any team out there needing some defensive help in this year's draft is going to get some good eats in damn near every round.
Well, and I think something interesting about this year's Senior Bowl, there's been a lot of talk of all of the underclassmen that have already, put their names in the draft. I think there's 135 or something like that underclassmen that have put their names in the draft already. So a little more incentive, a little more urgency here at this year's Senior Bowl.
Oh, it is, and I think it's a result of the influx of underclassmen. Like you said, 135, which is another record-breaking number. I think it was 116 last year. They're invading all the 7 rounds of the draft, so much so that the seniors, it's impossible for them to fit into that top 100, heck, even into the top 300. And at this point, the Senior Bowl, they have to alter their stance and get some of these juniors that have already graduated so they're technically eligible. They just made that exception not a few years back. And I think it's just what they have to do to help their event and help their numbers to say, well, no, we had X amount of players drafted. We have X amount of players that fit in the first round. If they don't take some of these other underclassmen, those numbers are going to start to dwindle.
Joe Everett from DraftScouts. Are you also covering this for NFL Draft Bible as well?
Oh, yeah, for both sites. We'll see a little bit of my content for the event at both places for certain.
All right, so there you go. You can follow Joe's work for the Senior Bowl and also in the lead-up to the NFL Draft on Twitter at Joe W. Everett and then at DraftScouts, and also at NFL Draft Bible. Joe, drive safe, man. Enjoy the week. Have a great time down there, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
All right, will do. Looking forward to it.